It is 5 p.m. and as superintendent, I will call the meeting to order as we have a reorganization this evening in keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency as amended by Governor Baker on February 12th, 2022. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board or commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count toward quorum. This meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. The first thing I would like to do in calling the meeting to order is the reorganization of the school committee. We will, I will put it up for a vote for the chair of the committee, who will then take over to call for the vote for the vice chair.
Recording in progress.
So is there a motion for chair of the school committee? Caroline?
I nominate Michelle Durance to be chair of the school.
Sorry, I said second.
And okay, so on a motion by Ms. O'Neill and a second by Ms. Wiseman, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
O'Neill, yes.
Do I vote?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course you vote.
Durance, yes.
Luca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you, guys.
Durance, I turn
Thank you.
to you. Congratulations. I turn the meeting over to you.
So I would like to make a motion to nominate Jen again for vice chair, unless there's somebody else who's crazy enough to want to do that. Jen's
That's it.
All right. Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
Luca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Hey, all right. Thank you. Congratulations. I also want to congratulate Nancy and Jen on their election and winning the election this weekend. And I look forward to working with you both in the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So first up is minutes from regular meetings. We have the minutes from the regular school committee meeting Thursday, May 7th, 2020. Well, that's executive session. Alicia, I have a question on that.
Yes.
2020.
Sorry.
The minutes from the first 2 minutes in our packet, executive session, May 7th, 2020, and September 22nd, 2020.
Right. You can
And
vote
Michelle,
on,
I'm sorry, those are both in the thing below.
right. You can those were never considered approved, but not to be published. So those are the only two you have to approve, but not to be published. And then the executive session is for the consideration of the declassification and publishing of all of those minutes.
Okay.
All the others below have already been approved by the school committee.
Okay. All right. So this is for the executive session. I just make sure this is correct. Yes. For Thursday, May 7th, 2020. Does anyone want me to hold them for questions or comments? Can I get a motion to approve and not release?
Wiseman, so moved.
Let's get a second.
Star, second.
All right. Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. And the next minutes are from the executive session on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. Does anyone want me to hold them for questions or comments? All right, can I get a motion to approve but not release?
So moved, DeLuca.
Can I get a second?
O'Neill, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. Item 6, FY23 budget presentation. Dr. Cabral?
Thank you. So this presentation is part of the FY23 public hearing. So we will, of course, be open for any comments or questions from the public as well as from the school committee. And I am going to share my screen with you. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm looking at a different screen here, just so you know. That's why I won't be looking at the camera. Okay, so this is a reminder of our process. You can see that the EPS strategic plan is the core of everything that we do. It is still current. And from there, we determine what our goals and our responsibilities are going to be for the next budget cycle. And from that, usually in January, December, January, it was about 1 to 2 months late this year, only because the state budget has been so late in coming out as well. So we were a little bit delayed. But typically in December and January, we have staff input where we have the principals, we work together as a cabinet. We have a slideshow that we all share. It's done the same way at every building. And they spend 2 monthly staff meetings reviewing the strategic plan, considering the goals and achievements that they wish for their students in their school, and then soliciting budget input based on that. So all of the budget requests that come from staff members are based specifically on their needs and meeting our goals and objectives from the strategic plan. In February, the principals then create a prioritized list for their building after hearing from all of their grade levels, departments, specialists, and they present those prioritized needs to the entire cabinet. At that point, it gives us the opportunity to have some, and they present out to every other member of the cabinet. It provides the opportunity for everybody to get a more global perspective of the budget, because just like a principal has to prioritize needs within a school from various different constituents in that building, we have to do the same thing at the district level. And it's very helpful for the principals to understand what's happening in other buildings that might not affect them and that they might not be aware of, which may or may not take priority over their building's needs that particular year. And it gives us the opportunity to think out 2, 3, or maybe 4 years of their needs and what can perhaps be leveraged in the following year so that maybe a more pressing need can be met this school year, for example. So then the executive team, which is the central office administration, we then prioritize we take all of those presentations and we prioritize that from what we think we're hearing from the district level, and also inject the feedback and information that we have working with our legislators on a regular basis, working with state superintendents and school committees, and we bring information to the table as well. We then present that to the cabinet again so that they can go back and present this to their schools, which they do typically in March. So they then present the district priorities. They should at that point have the ability to answer any questions about why something perhaps has been held in abeyance, maybe for a year or 2 years, what the critical need is from elsewhere in the district that is being leveraged above that particular need, or where their priorities fall in relation to our district prioritization based on reactive, proactive, and strategic needs. And then, anywhere between March and, of course, town meeting in May, we have a series of presentations. Several of them are this week between the select board, the finance committee, the school committee, the public hearing, staff, and so on. So this process takes place every year, and then basically those presentations go back and inform our strategic plan for the next year. And then we start the process all over again. So that, I just want to remind you of our process. And then we also have our target definitions for each of our needs here. And you can see that reactive or essential, which is where we've been living for several years now, are those things that are reactions to a current need or a mandate. It may not even fill that need entirely, but we're trying to backfill something that has already taken place. So either we're in danger of perhaps being cited by an organization or receiving needs improvement feedback, or it's something that has maybe been proactive in the past, but because we haven't been able to satisfy that need financially, it has moved to a reactive issue because we knew, of course, it was coming. Proactive are those things that are imminent. And when I say imminent, it means like in the next year or two. We know that it's coming. We know that it's a mandate that is right around the corner. And the lack of preparation for this creates in much more reactive needs that we then have to respond to. And then, of course, strategic is planning for the future needs, what we know is coming for our students. I always say that we're thinking 10 years ahead, and we need to think about not high school today, but the high school for our current kindergartners and what that's going to look like once they get there, and how are we going to get them ready for that. So it includes things, however, that other schools and districts already may have in place. A very common example I use for that is elementary foreign language. Now, because for those of you that have been on the school committee for a while, you know I've always had in my superintendency the reactive, proactive, and strategic models. But I realized after presenting them a couple of times that people would think of this strategic as the really outside of the box thinking. And I didn't want that perception to come across, because this very talented educator staff that we have in Easton, that we're very fortunate to serve, they definitely have the capacity to come up with those cutting edge ideas, the state of the art opportunities, programming for our kids that will really create robust employees going forward in the workforce and in a global society. Those, however, do not typically make our 3 budget needs, because we very rarely make it into strategic. But I didn't want people to think, wow, foreign language in elementary school, what a novel idea, what a pie in the sky idea. That's very common, and most of our neighbors actually have that. So we're actually falling behind in that, but it is a strategic need because it does have long-term effects. So that's why I use that as an example, and that's why I added innovative, just for people to know, no, we can think outside the literal box here. And the same thing for regressive. Unfortunately, 4 years ago, we were in a budget that was actually below reactive. And so we had to add the category of regressive, where we literally went backwards. We had to eliminate double-digit positions. The district went backwards in a few areas, to the extent that we're still trying to catch up to where we were and bring our capacity back up to where it was prior to that year. So this is just a reminder, and I'm going to show you what our school staffs came up with in terms of our reactive, proactive, and strategic needs for FY23. So once again, we find that we are asking for a budget this year from the town that is going to put us firmly in reactive and essential. However, and this is certainly not to scale, but I did put the arrow, I'm sure you don't remember, it's usually just square in the middle. I did put it higher because I do have hopes that we are going to be able to add the majority of these reactive needs to our budget this year. And I'll talk a little bit later about why we might be able to do that. They've all been identified by staff as reactive. The principal has put it up to that level of priority in their presentation, and then the executive team has carried that forward because it is at that level of need. And this includes the increased pre-K enrollment. So that's a good thing. That's really was part of our plan all along in investing, investing in the Blanche Eames School. I thought it would happen after the school was open, but fortunately, /unfortunately, but fortunately for us, it has become, instead of a proactive need, it's definitely reactive, because we found we had so many students on our waiting list for next year which is going to start, of course, in the 3 separate schools and move halfway through, that we not only needed to increase our half-day kindergarten, our half-day preschool teacher to full-time so that she could have 2 sections of half-day pre-K, but we also had to open an entire new section of full-day pre-K for students. So we do collect tuition for pre-K still. Most districts, just like we saw the progression of kindergarten becoming free in most districts, almost all districts in the Commonwealth at this point. Districts are doing this now with pre-kindergarten. Despite that, we do not make enough money in our pre-K tuitions to actually afford the staff that is there. So there is going to be a slight increase in our ask of the town that is to help us with this enrollment, but within a year, our enrollment in kindergarten is going to increase when these students predictably stay in the district, and that increases our capacity to meet foundation. And you ladies know that that's something we've been striving to meet for quite a long time so that we can benefit from not only foundation funds, but also things that come with it, like entitlement grants and the Student Opportunity Act. So this will definitely get us closer. And if this trend continues, it will work quite well in helping us to realize those savings. Free full-day kindergarten next year. We did say we cut it in half this year, the tuition. Next year, we did say that we predicted we would offer it for free, and we are going to offer it for free. What we're doing is slowly and incrementally adding to our bottom line budget. At the same time, the town is investing ARPA funds that they receive from the federal government to help us fund the difference for the next 3 years. So slowly increasing by 0.5% in FY 23, 24, and 25 will give us what we need to wean off of the grants and have all of our kindergarten staff in our budget. Now, will we need more staff by then because of increased enrollment? Probably. And so there's a little extra ask for that in this as well. But that was proactive for years and then became reactive. And it's such great news for this district and this town to be able to offer kindergarten for free to all of its students. Special education staff, I'm going to show you where we are realizing some savings in out-district placements, which of course was a huge goal of ours that is finally coming to fruition after several years of slowly putting more and more programs into place in the district. But we do have to make sure that they are staffed appropriately. And we are finding that we do have a couple of programs that have more need. One example is the high school. So we have a therapeutic program in all of our schools now. And when we get to the high school, we call it the bridge program, because its real intent is to be a bridge from students who have social emotional needs and extended absences, students who may have been hospitalized and are matriculating back into the system and really need a gentle way of making that transition. It is meant to be transient. They're meant to come in and out of the service as needed. What we're finding, though, throughout COVID, that population has tripled. The number of students that are making use of the quote-unquote bridge program, it's more of the more intense therapeutic services that we're seeing at the other grade levels. And so we literally need another entire section at the high school. However, again, it is helping us keep students in district, which, yes, it helps the bottom line, but first and foremost, it's the best, most inclusive and least restrictive environment for these students to be educated in their home school with their peers in their neighborhoods. So we're very excited about that happening. Another thing that we have been piloting for the last 3 years are the use of interventionists. We've had interventionists, which are special service providers, certified teachers. We have ELA interventionists who are certified reading specialists, and they are part-time, and they provide both push-in and pull-out services to students before we consider them for special education referrals. And we've had great success with both our reading and math levels. We started with reading interventionists and then added math. We don't have as many math interventionists as reading, and sure enough, our reading scores have increased and our math scores have been rather dormant. And so we're looking to bring in more math interventionists. We hired them right away because we saw the value was there. But again, like kindergarten staffing, we are doing that. We're leveraging that through grant funds right now. And so we need to slowly move those interventionists into the budget as well. Also last year, which tends to happen and could happen in any year, in the 11th hour, we decided to decrease the EL teacher that we were adding, and our intention this year is to make that a full-time position. What that would mean, similar to having 2 nurses in each of our schools once we have the Blanche Eames transition, this would give us 1 full-time EL teacher in each of our schools. Now, full disclosure, they work on a case basis, obviously, and the number fluctuates of how many students require services in any particular year or level of services that they require. So we do sometimes have teachers going in between 2 schools, but we'll all be on campus again. We think that even though it's a modest increase to a 1.0, we believe that we are going to realize efficiencies in that staffing because we will not have the travel time anymore to go back and forth between buildings, as far as Center School or Moreau Hall. So that gives us actual more time with students in the building. So we want to reassess at that point and then see what our service hours are again and what we might need to offer in the future. But it's a good opportunity for us to have one sort of housed in each building. But if the caseload is low in a particular building, they can easily go to a neighboring school and provide augmented services at that school. Then the Blanche Eames custodial staff, we currently in our 3 small elementary schools, we have part-time night custodians. Basically what we're looking to do is mirror the model at our other schools, our other 3 larger schools, which Blanche Eames will now be comparable in size. And so those nighttime positions will go to full-time. We don't have much, if any, community use of our elementary schools right now. They're just not made for that. They're not conducive to that. But that's the exact opposite of the Blanche Eames building. We're building that with the encouragement that we will be welcoming community members to use the building as much as possible. And so we will need full-time evening custodians there. And again, the model we're looking at for all 4 of our schools, once the final transition is made, is to have a maintenance custodian and X amount of custodians during the day, depending on the need, and a night supervisor custodian and X amount of custodians in the evening, depending on the school, depending on the amount of use, and so forth. We're also being told by the builders that there's going to be a pretty advanced, sophisticated system at Blanche Eames that none of our other 3 schools have. So we are going to have some special training there, and we're going to need to have a maintenance person there, where we don't currently have maintenance people at our 3 elementaries. Then we have been talking to the town, again, leveraging opportunities to save money. While it's an initial investment, I believe this is going to be a wash. I think it's going to be cost neutral for us and perhaps even save us money. We have a town carpenter that works for the DPW right now, and we make very good use of the town carpenter in our buildings. And so that means that we pay out of our budget for materials. We don't pay for labor. And we found a much needed position is a plumber in the same capacity and a maintenance person. So we are going to, the DPW is actually going to hire them. We're just going to assist with the hire, but these are going to be DPW employees. What that means, however, is we don't have to contract out hourly with plumbers to do work in our schools. It's going to be part of what we pay for the town plumber, which is going to save us a great deal of money. I think the last time I looked, we had about 1,000 requests for plumbing and maintenance needs in our buildings. If that's all happening with our own town employee, that's going to save us a great deal of money in hourly rates. We did discuss the human resources professional that we added. It's been a long time coming. We have a very experienced person at both town level and school level joining us on May 9th. We're really looking forward to that. It's going to be a much better level of service for every one of our over 600 employees. And finally, course consumables. We have been able to procure some top-notch programming, specifically in math and science. We're working on that now in ELA, but they do have consumables, and anything that is required in a curriculum, of course, we cannot charge students for. And so we need to make sure we have those consumables. However, like most people, including all of you, I'm sure, are finding that consumables in some of our other courses, like materials for our shops, food for food service, these have all escalated very quickly. And so we need to make sure that, again, this is reactive because we are reacting to the increase. Art supplies have also increased quite a bit, family consumer science and industrial arts. So those three have, just for the same consumables they use every year for level service, they are going to require a slight increase in their budgets. You can see, I'll go over proactive and strategic in less detail because these are things we likely will not be able to fund. And when I say we can't fund them, obviously, nothing is definite until town meeting and the taxpayers vote on a final bottom line budget. And it is predicated on the notion that we will get what we're asking for. And of course, that's not necessarily guaranteed either. So when I say that we are trying to make sure that we add these things this year and maintain these services, that's if we are able to get the increase that we're looking for. So under proactive, we have been trying to add a what we call a fifth special subject for our kindergarten through grade 5 students. Specifically for health, we only have one health teacher down at that grade level right now, but also technology and social emotional learning. Health is listed first because I would say that's really what we're trying to get in there first. You know that we had no health teacher at the high school. We were able to add that. We only ever had a health teacher at the middle school. And we added one to Richardson Olmsted, who has been piloting a second grade class at Parkview, and it's been very, very successful. So it is our goal on a proactive level to make sure that all students from kindergarten up are receiving a very comprehensive health and wellness education program as part of their experience. We also have targeted professional development, enhanced security, and an SRO. Again, we would love to have an SRO. I do know that we are going to be getting a new police chief, and this can be a new conversation again to potentially have an SRO on campus. When I say enhanced security, that is strictly facilities. So we do not have up-to-date security systems in all of our schools, and we do want to make sure that they are compatible with one another. The Blanche Ames that's coming online in January, and the 3 other schools. I have been talking to the town about these being capital expenses, and hopefully we can chip away one school at a time in that way. K-6 foreign languages, that's obviously something we talk about every year. School adjustment counselors, we would like to add at RO and EMS. Again, they share staff, and same thing with BCBA. They share a BCBA, And we find it's just better to have a person full-time in the building, because you know that when there's a crisis or a breakdown, it's always when the professional is in the other building. And even if it's next door, we just want to make sure we're being not only reactive in a very timely manner, but to move to proactive. And that's why this is in proactive. We want to provide the services that students need before they have an episode or get to the point where they're breaking down. Special ed coordinator, that model came into play maybe 6 or 7 years ago. The only school without one at this point is the high school. And so that would be a proactive move for us. The playground at Richardson Olmsted, we all know that that is not up to the standards of not only safety, but it's not ADA compliant. So right off the bat, the fact that it's not able to be used by all students, especially those with some disabilities or mobility issues, is very concerning. We want all our children to be included. We want all of our children to be able to have a play structure that works for them. But beyond that, we want to make sure that it is an extension of the school building. It can be fun and it can be very active, but it can also be educational. And so we're working with a designer now to try to come up with something that works for Richardson Olmsted, and we will be looking at capital, CPA funds, and private donations to fund that playground project. And then digital texts and resources, because we're now one-to-one, we're able to take advantage of digital texts and resources specifically for our high school students. And so slowly adding those incrementally to our budget will maximize the use of the technology that we were fortunate to get during COVID. And then you can see strategic is mostly expanding or increasing things that we already have in place. One thing I do want to point out that is very quickly going to become proactive is the skills program at the middle school. So we have foundations, language-based skills, and TLC programs in every building where we have students that require it. However, this year and last year, we did not have any students in the skills program at EMS. Not next year, but the year after, we will have students moving up from RO. And so we're able to project that that will be a need. So we'll be proactive next year because it will be a need for the year after. Any questions about any of these subjects or needs or requests from staff, programmatically or otherwise? Okay, so I think this captures a lot of hard work, pages and pages and pages of documentation that was obviously pared down to a much smaller and more reasonable request in terms of budgets. But I really want to once again take the opportunity to thank all of the building administrators and every single educator in each building who really approached this with very seriousness of purpose and really thought long and hard about how we can make better, stronger programs for our students. And they were very thoughtful about it and very passionate about it. And so I'm very proud to advocate for these needs on their behalf and on behalf of our students. I want to just remind you of where we are with grants. These are the 4 largest grants that came from the federal funding via COVID. We have ESSER 1, 2, and 3 that we get as a school system. The ARPA plan, the American Rescue Plan, is something that goes to the town. And so you can see that ESSER 1 and 2 have already been completely expended. ESSER 1 mostly was really in the throes of COVID. So a lot of that was just to help us do business on a daily basis, between professional development on how to teach remotely or to teach in hybrid, furniture that we needed to separate students when we were really in the height of COVID, textbooks because we weren't able to share them with one another, and then of course the technology. the devices, the infrastructure, and the educational software that it took for us to go one-to-one. ESSER 2, excuse me, ESSER 2 was more focused on the tail end of COVID and when schools were open again. And we started talking about how do we recoup some of those skills that were lost. And we had a very robust and extremely successful summer school program last year. So we're looking to continue that. So when it says summer school and you see it in a few of these grants, it's because we're looking to have the same summer school program for the next 3 years. And so they're taken from different funding sources. The interventionists, when I mentioned that they were in the budget, this is where they are. Excuse me, when I mentioned that they were in grants, this is where they are. And then mental health supports. We were able to make use of tools such as the DESA Mini that are individually given for every student to assess their health and wellness, but also the health fair that we had for staff and professional development that we provide to really make sure that our staff members also are provided with the skills they need to get through that really difficult time. ESSER 3, you can see, is primarily spent on summer schools and the interventionists, also the HR professional, as we, like kindergarten, incrementally add that to our budget, and educational software. It is extremely encouraging how many teachers who never used technology before, particularly in the pre-K to 3 grades or so, now find it difficult to live without it. And they are taking what they learned from COVID, taking the best of it, and really wanting to continue with their students with it. A lot of these programs are things that students can do at home. They can practice. It can be reinforcement to what they're learning in school. And it can also help fill achievement gaps. Lexia, for example, is a reading program that is calibrated to a student's need. And then a teacher can follow up with a structured plan to help them with any skill deficits. We've seen great gains in students reading deficits with a program like Lexia, for example. And then ARPA, the reason it says negative 1.5 million is only because that's not, as a school district, we did not receive $2.6 million. The town received that. And of that, we have received 1.5 million. Now, the county did subsequently release more money to the town. And this is what we've gotten from this grant. And as we need other, mostly capital expenditures, we will speak to the town about it and have been speaking to the town about it. But so far, it's being used for summer school. That's the full day free kindergarten I talked about leveraging grants for, and also early college and career pathways. I've done a lot of talking about the high school, how we've been able to not only backfill skills for the littles, but make sure that the kids at the upper level are getting some authentic experiences with exploration of careers, but also making college credits affordable to students. We're finding people are taking gap years, and they became extremely popular, especially with COVID, that students were taking gap years. We're trying to encourage that connection to college again, and we're trying to subsidize college credits to get a robust program going for students, and we're leveraging grant funds for that. Some budget considerations before I show you the final slide, which is our request of the town. We are going to see some savings. We've found that, again, a lot of this is I believe, COVID related, because we're seeing some phenomena that I haven't seen before. One example is it was almost understood universally that everyone wants to finish their school year with their kids, with their students. That has changed dramatically during COVID. There's nothing wrong with someone retiring partway through the school year. It's just less usual than in the past. It was very unusual, and now we have people leaving, as soon as their years of service are completed, or their birthday, which factors into retirement. So virtually every month of the year, September, October, November, December, all the way to the end of the school year, we are seeing retirements. What that means is we have a long-term sub going in there, filling in for the rest of the year. And when you have a top step person who leaves partway through a school year and you fill that in with a substitute, there's savings there. Now, that won't be the entire savings going forward in the future because obviously we have advertised, and if you've seen our ads, you see we do have quite a lot of these positions open right now. We hope to hire with the expectation that we have experienced people coming into the district, but at lower levels. I will say, however, in the last 2 years, again, throughout COVID, we're finding that it's difficult to find first or second year teachers who have actual student teaching experience. When schools were shut down, student teaching was essentially shut down. And even during hybrid, it wasn't a very authentic experience. So a lot of students are coming to us with no experience in a classroom. Of course, that's what we prefer. And so we're finding that we're having to hire people on slightly higher steps than we have in the past. We are also seeing that because so many students are taking gap years, we have less educators coming up through the pipeline. And so we're working with our local colleges, universities, with the town, and ways that we can really try to stimulate that pipeline again so that we don't have an ongoing shortage. We're also trying to hire diverse staff, and that's a very small pool of people. And most districts are trying to do the same thing. And so we are, in essence, competing for staff. And of course, that creates more competitive salary offerings. So that's retirement savings, unfilled positions I spoke about, out of district decreases. We are starting to see, I think, and I'm going to tell you why I'm saying I think, the fruits of our labor of educating our children in the least restrictive environment, which is right here in their school system. So we are not sending as many students out for outplacements. That I predicted was going to take 4 to 5 years to see, and now we're seeing it. We have students who, we were able to bring a lot of students back from an out-of-district placement, but if we keep them from going out of district in the first place, then they don't stay in the program until age 22, which is the case now. So we have several, this is the first year, and I'm hoping we see this as a recurring cycle, but this is the first year, and that's why I'm cautiously optimistic that we're seeing a lot of savings with the out-of-district tuitions for next year. Again, we do want to reinvest some of that into the special ed programs to make sure that they're properly staffed so that we can keep robust programs and keep students in our system. And we also have to realize that, of course, there are always going to be students who present as needing an out-of-district placement. And so we can't reinvest 100% of that savings because we realize students are going to be moving into those services as well. What we're hoping to see is that it's less students every year and that there will be a certain amount of money that we realize is an ongoing savings that we can reinvest into the district, into all areas and not just special education. Food service, of course, this year, we've always carried a small contingency for running in the red because we always have. Because the federal government is providing lunches this year, we don't have that deficit. And then, of course, next year, it's going to be half of the year where we won't be paying rent here at 50 Oliver Street, but then the following year, it will be the rent for the whole year. So those are just some of the examples of savings we'll have. Unfortunately, as you probably anticipated, we also have some expenses. This is a contract negotiation year, and we don't yet have completed contracts. And so we don't know what that expense is going to be. In addition, minimum wage is increasing each January. And so some of our hourly employees, we need to make sure we stay ahead of minimum wage so that we can remain competitive and we don't have all these unfilled positions. Also, a great benefit of going one-to-one, a great benefit of the federal funds during COVID was the ability to go one-to-one. However, that requires a procurement cycle that allows us to capitalize on that equipment for a long time to come. So as we, now that we have one-to-one for every student, not only did we have to increase our infrastructure capacity, but we also have to have a more aggressive procurement cycle because now we have more computers to replace on an annual basis. Our transportation contract is, for the big buses, is increasing by $30 per bus next year. So that's a little over $90,000. That is going to increase next year. Our full day K staff to going from revolving to the budget I spoke of, that 0.5% each year for the next 3 years. We want to move our interventionists to the budget, even if we do them one person at a time, because when those grants run out, we will not have them. And our staff has found that they are very instrumental in the success of our students. Course expense increases, I spoke about that earlier. If you remember, family consumer science, industrial arts, and art courses. Our utilities, like the average homeowner is finding, are increasing, and we need that appropriate special ed staffing that I explained. Any questions about things that we're seeing on the horizon for next year? Jackie?
Thank you. I just wanted to, if you could clarify a couple of things. So under the expenses, our contract negotiations, it's for all bargaining units this year, is that correct?
Yes, and some individual contracts. So we have 6 bargaining units and we have maybe 40 individual contracts.
Okay. For the out-of-district SPED programs, maybe you could tell us, just so people listening have an idea, what an average cost is. I know it's a big range, but just and talk about maybe a little bit about the transportation costs for those programs as well, just to kind of give a picture. That's okay?
Yes. Out of district means that we have a student who either is medically fragile, and we just don't have the capacity to offer them services here, and they need a more environment, more like a hospital placement, or they have other special needs that require an intensive program. And our numbers here are so small that we don't have enough students to have our own program here in the district. Unfortunately, districts are seeing increases in social emotional needs in particular. And this creates competition for very few spaces. And so, you know, when Jackie mentions transportation, we sometimes have to transport students as far as Rhode Island or Connecticut, New Hampshire. If they are in need of residential services, but the transport is too far because all of the area is oversaturated, with need from us and other districts, then it becomes a residential placement. Residential placements can go upwards of $250,000 per year per student, and that doesn't include any transportation. Some programs, students go home on weekends, for example. So there's a huge gamut. We have students who may go to BICO, for example, in Franklin or Walpole for day services. So instead of going to Oliver Ames or Richardson Olmsted each day, we transport them to that school. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have students that are in full residential programs, and they are there all day, every day throughout the school year and get very intense services. So again, that can go anywhere. Average placements are between $30,000 and $40,000 for a day, on the low end of a day placement, per year per student, upwards, like I said, of $250,000. And that day placement doesn't include transportation. That's different than tuition, and upwards of $250,000 for a residential placement. And students are, unless they graduate or we are able to bring them back into the district, they are in such a placement or can be in such a placement until 22 years of age. So if a student requires that level of service from first grade on, you can see how that is very costly. Necessary, and we support that, but it is extremely costly. And so we have to, we never know when someone may either get recommended by their special education team to be in a day or residential program, and we never know when someone's going to move into Easton and could be in a day or residential program. So it really can happen, and it could happen tomorrow. Somebody could move into the district, and by law, we're required to educate them, of course, in the best environment for their needs, and sometimes that is out of district.
Thank you. And just one more question. Do you, how many interventionists do we have right now?
I think we have 17 right now, and they go from the pre-K to 2 schools, 3 to 5 schools in the middle school. We started with just 8 at Richardson Olmsted when I was an assistant superintendent. And we paid for them exclusively out of Title I grants. And we experimented at the pre-K, not experimented, piloted at the pre-K to 2 school when we had an opportunity of a reading specialist retire and using interventionists instead. And we found that we were able to hire interventionists that were reading certified. And it gave us a lot more flexibility with schedules. We could have more interventionists. We could have math interventionists. And then we did it the next year at another elementary school. And again, found the scores, you know, the students were getting that one-on-one attention and the scores went way up. And so we're really encouraged that this is an effective program. And so we'd like to keep the interventionists. They're part-time employees.
I'm sorry, I just have one more. And you said transportation contract increase. I know you said they were for the big buses, but what
Yes.
about for the smaller vans, smaller buses too? Is there increases that on that as well?
We don't expect a huge increase to the rate, but again, if someone were to become eligible for services or moved into the district, then of course that would be an increase.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, and the final slide is really just the bottom line. I have already shared this with.
Hand up, Alicia.
I'm sorry?
I did have a couple of questions. Yeah, so before
Want me to go
we,
back?
yeah, I just had a couple of questions. If actually we'll go back a slide or two, or do you want us to hold questions until
No, if
the end? Okay.
so
So in the proactive, can you give us a reminder of the school adjustment counselor and BCBA for RO and EMS? What's the current number that we have between the 2 schools, and what would a proactive staffing level look like for those positions?
Good question. So we had 1, and it was shared between both schools. And then we were able to add another. We've been slowly adding. And then we were able to bring in therapeutic programs at both the middle school and Richardson Olmsted. And the TLC program really requires a school adjustment counselor for that program. They work in concert with the teacher. They work in concert with a BCBA to come up with behavior plans. There's an intense need for those students. And so that leaves 1 school adjustment counselor for essentially the rest of the school. And so we would look to add 1 that could potentially serve both RO and EMS, that could assist the school adjustment counselor that is providing services for the general population. So if we have maybe 600 or 700 students for a school adjustment counselor, The recommendation from that professional organization is in the 200s per school adjustment counselor.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Now, not every student makes use of a school adjustment counselor, of course, but we are again, this is the broken record part, we're working strictly on a reactive basis right now. School adjustment counselors in this district, because the school committee pushed for it and I wholeheartedly supported it and have found the benefits of it. They're not only certified school adjustment counselors, but they're licensed mental health counselors as well. And so they have the capacity to provide a lot of proactive services to our students so they don't get to a point that they need these intensive therapies. And so we would like to get to a point where we have enough school adjustment counselors to be proactive.
Okay. And then I had a question about the DPW positions. Do you have ballparks for how much we have been spending on, plumbing or other maintenance that we've had to pay out of pocket for, or have been charged for? I don't know if we've been charged for by DPW in the past for those.
No, so we will hire these service providers at hourly rates, or companies typically, to come in and do the work. And I don't have a total for you because we do it by project, but we can certainly parcel that out and let you know. I know just anecdotally that we're going to fare far better by having someone on staff, but we can definitely parcel out those numbers for you.
Okay, and then
we're not paying for these positions. We're just contributing toward their DPW positions. So it's not, even if we were to hire them, we would be making out better. But this is just a portion of these people.
And do you know what that portion is? Is it a set percentage for each position, or is it something that will be kind of figured out as they figure out the workload between the town and the schools?
Based on the use. Right, based on the use. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sure.
I think that was it for questions that I had.
Okay. So our total increase this year, last year was just over 3%. This year we're looking at 3.965%. It is just over a $3 million increase. And, just the average year of rollover for steps and lanes for the units who get them, and modest increases that we've seen in the past, has been over 3%. So fortunately, some of the savings that we're realizing, predominantly through the special education outplacement, we're able to reinvest in a way that we're still asking for 3.9%, but reminding you that 0.5% of that is for the kindergarten to become full-time, to slowly move interventionists in, and so on. So I think it is in the realm of possibilities that we could get this at town meeting. The last time I was in conversation with the town administrator, there was a deficit still at the town level, but we're going to re-examine that, and they're re-examining that as their numbers are coming in much more fine-tuned on what they're going to be receiving. And hopefully, if we're able to get the 3.65% increase, we will be able to meet our reactive needs this year, which again isn't every reactive need, but it's what we consider our most pressing reactive needs. Jen?
On the town's projections for money coming in, are they using the $60 or $30 per student minimum aid estimate? I forget where the legislature left off, whether or not that's solid or not.
It's supposed to be 60, and that's, you've kind of hit on what I'm hoping will make the difference, because it is a couple of $100,000 that we are in, that the budget is in a deficit at the town level. And really the savings there, or what typically gets cut to close the deficit, is the labor costs or the budget costs on the town and our side. It's not, it's mostly this 80% of our staffing. So you can't change contractual obligations, and so it would mean we wouldn't be able to meet all of our reactive needs. Hopefully it won't come to that. I'm hoping. I have a positive attitude. Hoping this year between, leveraging grant funds, we are kicking a couple cans down the road. That is true, but not without caution. We have plans in place where we slowly increase each year. Now, of course, if we don't get this year, if we don't get it next year or the year after, we may have to go back to a small tuition for kindergarten. Obviously, it's no one's goal, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay. And then I think as a reminder, I know we don't want to get into all of the intricacies of the foundation budget, but for anybody here viewing, can you remind them of why the full day K or tuition free and partial tuition is a big difference in getting us towards that foundation budget? Yeah.
Sounds super counterintuitive, but the state puts a certain sort of price tag on every child. I always say it's like a little price tag on every kiddo's forehead. And, which is the estimated cost of educating a child. And the state will reimburse you for the average cost of educating a child to an extent. That's kind of a simplistic version of it. However, if you have half-day students, they will reimburse you on a half-day basis. If your students are paid for with tuitions, they don't count them at all. And so even if a student is a full-day kindergarten student right now, if they pay tuition, they only count as a half-day student. And so the higher the cost of educating a student, the higher the reimbursement to us. And so I know this is a simplistic way of saying it, and I certainly can get into more detail, but students who are in vocational programs, it is presumed they're higher cost to educate, and so we receive more reimbursement, which is why we're working so hard on our career pathways for our high school students. The number of students you have, which is why we're working so hard in the Blanche James building to increase enrollment. We're starting to see that pan out. And kindergarten is sort of the third of our triad, our stool that we're trying to leverage to qualify for foundation payments, is to have every student count as a full-time kindergarten student. And so not only is it an equity issue, and we're able to make sure every child can get a free and appropriate education, starting with kindergarten, but we also encourages students, still not compulsory in Massachusetts, and so it encourages parents to send their students to kindergarten, which benefits every student in a district, because we've done studies even just here in our district that show that students who were in full-day kindergarten fare better and need less compensatory services as they go through the grades. And so that benefits everyone in the district, as the funds for that can be spread out for all students. And so we're slowly moving in the direction of those three areas, and hoping that they will qualify us for foundation funding in the future. Right now, just to put the punctuation mark on it, if people don't understand what that means, basically instead of foundation, we get $30 per student every year increase. That's it. This year, we're hoping that we're getting $60 per student. So that's $100,000 typically for us. If it's $60, it's $200,000 for us. That is one outplaced student, for example, could be that full $200,000 a year. So our expenses are increasing, as people see in private homes. Our expenses are increasing a lot faster than our revenue or income is.
Yeah. and I think if I can just throw in, I know I crunched the numbers of that, $30 or even $60, but let's go with the $30 increase per year. Based on our per pupil spending, it's around 0.2%. And as we know, our costs go up by way more than that. So every year we get farther and farther away from having the state maintain a proportionate level of funding compared to
That's
what
right.
our taxpayer increases every year.
No, that's true, because when I came to the district, we were about $1 million under foundation. Now we're about 3 million under foundation. So that goal gets further and further away every year, which is why we're working on it so hard right now. And people are wondering what I'm doing at the State House and why are we trying to encourage certain legislation and why do I care about sewers in Easton? They're all connected to the bottom line for our school system as well. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to attempt to stop sharing now. And
Are you done, Leisha?
I am just trying to stop sharing.
Okay, well, just while you're doing that, I just want to remind the people who are on the Zoom call that we'll give you an opportunity right now to drop questions in the chat about the budget.
Yes.
Anything that you have specific to the budget before we take a vote. So I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes because I see people came on after we said that at the beginning. And I just want to be fair to everybody.
Absolutely. And just a reminder that for open meeting law compliance, people do need to put their name and address, please.
So I'll give it like 2 minutes and we'll see where we're at.
As a point of clarification, fortunately, Teresa Skinner just sent me some information about the placements that I was talking about in special education. The out-of-district day placement average, the average is 75,000. So while there may be a low range for us, the average is 75,000 per student per year. And mid $50,000 to $90,000. I'm sorry, mid-range is $50,000 to $90,000, and residential average is 200,000 plus. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
And again, that doesn't include transportation, which can be.
For the day students, it doesn't
Yeah.
include transportation, which could be a vehicle for one student who's going to a program by themselves.
Okay. I'm looking, I do not see that any questions have come in. So I'm going to move on to item 8, which is discussion and vote to approve the FY23 budget. Are there any last minute school committee questions, comments? All right. Can I get a motion to approve the FY23 budget?
Star, so moved.
Can I get a second?
O'Neill, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
Luca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next part is executive session. So I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session and to return to open session for the purpose and with respect to purpose to comply with the open meeting law to review minutes of prior executive sessions for approval and or release, looking at 5/7/2020, 5/14/2020, 5/21/2020, 5/28/2020, 6/4/2020, 6/9/2020, 6/18/2020, 8/6/2020, 8/20/2020, 8/25/2020, 9/3/2020, 9/10/2020, 9/14/2020, 9/22/2020, 9/24/2020, 10/8/2020, 10/22/2020, and 11/12/2020. Do I have a second?
Second, DeLuca.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right.
You're going to typically see these in clusters. We've done this before, as you know, because typically they are all about the same litigation or the same negotiation process. So we put them together for your consideration. You're going to obviously need to read them carefully and determine, since we're currently in negotiations, if they're going to have any impact on this negotiations process. We also have a set for you for Thursday's meeting and also for May.
All right. Thank you.
Michelle,
Yes.
I just noticed a question.
Okay.
There's no, oh, it just says, may I ask a question? There's no question.
If it has to do with the budget.
The question is, why is the school committee 2 years behind in reviewing the executive meeting minutes? We have some strategies for negotiation that we've carried over. And so we just need to consider if they affect this negotiations, and they affected the last negotiations, and so they weren't declassified. So it's possible that if they don't affect this negotiations, that they will be declassified.
Thank you. All right. So let's move to executive and we'll be back. Thank you. Looks like everyone's back. All right, before we take a vote, I just want to mention the next meeting is on the 28th, this Thursday, April 28th at 5 o'clock. And I'm not sure the details on the joint meeting. Do you know them yet, Leisha?
Yes, Wednesday. This Wednesday at, it says 6:30 on my calendar, but I think it's 7.
Or 7.
I'm gonna ask Lynn to double check and let you know tomorrow.
I had 6:32, so they must have changed it.
Maybe, yeah, it's traditionally been 7, but maybe they did try to do it to give people extra time.
Okay. And we need a link for that as well.
Lynn, did you do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to make a motion to release previously approved executive session minutes for the following meetings: Thursday, May 7th, 2020, Thursday, May 14th, 2020, Thursday, May 21st, 2020, Thursday, June 18th, 2020, Thursday, August 6th, 2020, Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, Thursday, September 10th, 2020, Monday, September 14th, 2020, Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020, Thursday, September 24th, 2020, Thursday, October 8th, 2020, Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Do I have a second?
Wiseman, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Yes?
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, great. And then I need a motion to adjourn.
O'Neill, so moved.
Can I get a second?
Second, DeLuca.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes?
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You
guys.
also. Good night.